Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Okay, let's get started. It also will take long. Hari Om. Anavavatu Sahano Bhunaktu
Sahaviryakarvavahai Tejasvinavaditamas Vidvishavahai. Om
Shanti
Shanti. Gita Dhyana. Om Parthaya Pratipudita Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayini Amba Tvamanusandadhami Bhagavad-giti Bhavadvishini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Laravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharatadaya Purnava Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Pravaitrikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Purokta Gopalanandana Partho Vatsasirmukta Tam Geetamritam Mahat Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Ishmatrutada Jayadratajala Gandharanilo Shalyagrahavati Karnena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarya Makara Duryodhana Vartini Utirna Khalu Pandavairanava Kaivartaka Keshavaha Parashadhyavachattarojamamalam Geetartagantotkatam Nanajnanakakesaram Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Shatyanashakairaharaha Pipiyamanam Buddha Adharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradhamsina Shreyase Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayati Giri Yatkripatamaham Bhante Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Sunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangha Padakramo Manishade Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatina Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam Navidusura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha.
Hari Om. So we saw that Bhagavan Sri Krishna is explaining using comprehensive logic to Arjuna why Karma Yoga is suitable for him and why he should be performing Karma Yoga. At the same time, Bhagavan is giving us a clear message, all of us, through Arjuna, to all of humanity, what people should do on various fronts in terms of karma, in terms of actions, in terms of karma yoga. How should they act? And some of the points to revise what Bhagavan said are: the individual's progress is sequential on the spiritual path. And he introduced this concept of spirit of cooperative endeavor, that is Yagyartharth. And Bhagavan encouraged all of us to follow it. And Bhagavan not only said to follow it, he also said that I created all elements of creation along with this spirit of Yagya. Sahayagya prajaha srishtvaha. Srishtvaha created all the prajaha, everything, all the aspects of creation, along with Yagya, Sahayagya. And then he introduced, or he talked about the causal chain that establishes this interdependent, interlinked chain that establishes cosmic order in creation. And he said, "O human being, do not be responsible for any break in this chain." And there are two critical aspects of this chain, which are almost in the middle, which are almost entirely dependent on you. And the chain itself is that the beings come from food, food comes from rain, rain comes from Yagya, Yagya comes from Karma, Karma comes from Vedas, and Vedas come from Brahman. And if the all-pervading Brahman itself is following this cosmic chain, then human being, you do not have any excuse to not follow it. And then Bhagavan said that a person cannot reach the state of actionlessness, na karma, by not performing duties. Just by choosing to not perform the duties, one cannot be actionless. And in the same vein, by mere renunciation, just by giving up of actions, by mere renunciation, a person cannot attain perfection in samadhi, naishkarmya. Essentially, what Bhagavan is trying to tell us is, by taking the excuse of meditation, by taking the excuse of the next steps in the spiritual path, nididhyasana, samadhi, and so on, savikalpa samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi, and so on, by taking recourse to that at the cost of performance of duties, one will not make progress. So one cannot run away from life, is what Bhagavan has told us. And now he continues. We will go to verse 17.
Yastva maratirevasyat atmatriptascha manavaha atmangiva cha santushtaha tasya karyam na vidyate.
Bhagavan here is comparing the person he is going to talk about with the person that he has referred to till now. Till now, we saw in the last satsang, he was talking about people who are dependent on the satisfaction of sense organs. He was referring to those people. Now he is saying, but yastu atmarati, the person who rejoices in the self, atmarati, that person rejoices only in the self, and who is satisfied in the self and who is contented in the self, such a person is not bound by action. Earlier we saw what? Indriya Ramo, the person who is reveling in his senses, a person who aram, enjoys in the Indriyas. That person. And why? Because of the nature of that person. And because of this nature, extracts from the environment. It's again the concept of yajna. Takes, receives, takes, extracts from the environment and from the people. Such people, and a lot of us do that in the course of our day-to-day life, our rati, our tripti, our santushti, all of that comes from the world and is also dependent on the world. But a person, Bhagavan says, who is satisfied and contented in the self, that person who is contented in the performance of duties, not looking for results of those duties or actions, that person who works with the spirit of yajna, with the spirit of nourishing, providing nourishment to other as elements of creation, and then thinking of one's own nourishment. That person, in addition to cosmic nourishment, also gains self-nourishment. When you work in that manner, when you do your duties in that manner, when you exist in that manner, because you are not seeking all the time, the satisfaction is more. And what does Bhagavan say here? He talks about Atma Tripti. The person is delighted or receives delight from the self. The person is Atma Rathi, satisfied in the self. And the person has Atma Santushti, receives contentment from the self. And such a person who gets delight, satisfaction, and contentment from the self is not bound by action. Bhagavan says, na vidyate karyam. And why is that? Because the first person is first focused on giving without expecting anything in return. And when you don't have expectations, you are a lot more satisfied, contented, and delighted. So once, and this is a real experience of mine, so I must share it. Once I was in this satsang, quote unquote satsang, where a Swamiji was to come and give a talk. And, these are also called Diksha visits. So when the Swamiji came and the entourage came, one of the people in his entourage, in his group, told the host that, today Swamiji is feeling really hungry. So let us first do the Diksha and then Swamiji will give his talk. So obviously, in these kind of Dikshas, it's a proper elaborate festive meal that is prepared. So, a multi-course meal that was laid out. Swamiji had the meal. Obviously, it was pretty obvious that he was hungry because he literally gobbled up the meal. And then he said, tript, I'm tripped, I'm delighted indeed. But did it stop there? Where does Rati come from? Rati is satisfaction. So there was already some small dessert item in the meal. But Swamiji said, there should have been gulab jamun. It would have gone well with the rest of the meal. So immediately the host, Swamiji is saying gulab jamun, it's not like he may have wanted it or not, but he said it. So you have to go get it immediately. Luckily, there was a place nearby where you could procure it. Immediately the host got gulab jamun. Within 2, 3, 5 minutes, the gulab jamun was there just above, below the apartment. So Swamiji had that gulab jamun and he said, Rati was also obviously obtained. The Swamiji appeared very satisfied. But was he contented after this? He was sitting there, everybody was sitting there, everybody was now eagerly waiting for his talk, and he said, some filter coffee, would have been nice, right? So Swamiji then had filter coffee, okay? And after the big meal and the gulab jamun and the filter coffee and, the loud burp that followed it, we can all guess how the lecture went, the lecture itself, the talk, the, pravachan. So therefore, how should a person be? How should a person perform various actions? Is this the way a person should perform action? Bhagavan says no. Therefore, he says in the next verse,
Tasmat asakta satatam karyam karma samachara asaktu hyacharan karma paramapnoti purushaha.
So Bhagavan says, always perform your action with dedication, with Shraddha and completeness in Shraddha, fully having joy in that action, having that sense of fulfillment in that action, having that sense of love towards that action. Bhagavan had also earlier used the term samachara, excellence. Excellence in the pursuit, and especially the obligatory actions, without any attachment. Because performing action without attachment, Bhagavan says, the person earns the supreme. Param apnoti purushaha. The person earns the supreme. Now we saw earlier in verse 16, we talked about the person who revels. And this is beautiful example of Bhagavan himself in another form as Lord Rama, who revels and revels in his bhaktas. Lakshmana and Sita, because of whom he is able to undertake the vanvas that he had to. Bharata, who safeguarded the kingdom Ayodhya in Sri Rama's absence by placing his sandal, his footwear on the throne on his behalf. Sugriva, who dedicated or who put his entire army at the disposal of Sri Rama. Vibhishana, who actually went against his brother because he sincerely felt that it was not the right path and was so devoted to Bhagwan Sri Rama that he took a stance opposing his own people. And Hanuman, of course, who greater a bhakt than Hanuman? He lived, breathed Sri Rama. But more than anything else, Sri Rama reveled in the performance of his duties. The Vanvas itself was the requirement to perform his duty, to keep his father's vow intact, to the extent of extreme personal discomfort and without any sense of attachment at all. So the most important aspect that Bhagavan Sri Rama himself reveled in, Ramaha means reveling, was performing his duties. And Bhagavan says, so Arjuna, just like Sri Rama, revel in the performance of your duties. And now Arjuna is guided by Bhagavan on being a leader who is worthy of followership. Because a person who performs the duty is the one who is worthy of followership. And Bhagavan guides him in terms of how he should do that. Arjuna, remember, is a king. But leadership itself is not a trait that comes from followership. Leadership is an individual trait. In any situation, one can establish the characteristic or the trait of a leader. If a person is just cooking in the kitchen all alone, the way, the cooking is done with that sense of love. They say that when food is cooked with love, it tastes a lot more better. When a mother cooks for her child, the food comes out excellently. So with that level of devotion, shraddha, love, fulfillment, when you do that, with that samachara attitude, when it is done, any task assumes the characteristic and the traits of leadership. And any person, whether you have a following or not, it becomes a leader. The best example in our history is Mahatma Gandhi. This old man, frail-looking man, with half-dressed, just took his stick and started walking. He didn't know what he was, he of course knew what he was doing, but he didn't know what everyone else is doing, or he didn't even probably care. He just started walking the Dandi March, the Salt March. And lo and behold, the entire nation was following. Did he plan for the nation to be followed? Did he ask for followership? Did he get onto a mic and start lecturing and telling everybody what he's going to do? He stated that this is what it is, and he started going on the march. And suddenly, the entire nation was following him, not just for that march, but every subsequent event after that. Bhagavan now tells Arjuna, how to perform action that is worthy of followership. In verse 21.
Yadyada sharati shreshtaha tattadivi tarujanaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanu vartate.
So here Bhagavan says that whatever a prominent person does, right, wrong, good, bad, ugly, the common people do. Whatever he sets as a standard, the world follows. So we just gave this beautiful example of Mahatma Gandhi. By the way, even small little things, like last time when we covered this verse, I talked about, at that time it happened. coincidentally, that our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, just before we had covered this verse, Corona had come up. There was this COVID, the cases were rising, and he said, play the bugles and, bang the drums, and the count will come down, And guess what? The entire nation followed. Logically, does it make sense? No, though India has done fairly well in COVID, but logically it doesn't make sense. But a respected leader, a person with followership, a person who the world wants to emulate, whatever that person does, the world follows. The Indian cricket team, you look at the youngsters today, everyone has a beard. I tell my son and nephews, what is this, guys? Get a clean shave sometimes. You know what Virat Kohli started? I think it was Virat Kohli. He started that trend. He developed a beard. Everyone in the team developed a beard. Every youngster today has a beard. I don't know what kind of a fashion statement that is. But you go out and watch. It takes, it's not like people are lazy, by the way. It takes effort to maintain a beard also. It's just to become a fashion statement started by, a sporting icon. So Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda used to say, values are not taught, they are caught. That's what they say when they say that learning begins at home. Even before a child starts to learn in the school, learning begins at home. And now Bhagavan says, not only in terms of how a leader should work, he gives his own personal example. And he says, how does he, Bhagavan, go about his own responsibilities? And he tells Arjuna, look at me. Don't I perform my duties, do my karma yoga? Don't I do that? We will recite verses 22 and 23 together.
Name partasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptamavaptavyam varta eva cha karmani yadi hyaham na varteyam jatu karmanya tandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha.
So Bhagavan says that there is nothing in the three worlds that is to be done by me. There is nothing, kinchana, in the Trishu Lokeshu, in all the three worlds, that, O Arjuna, that is my kartavyam. Nor is there anything that is unattained by me. Anavaptum. There's nothing that I have to now receive, that I have to get. Even if you see in the Mahabharata war, Krishna didn't need anything from, he had nothing to do with the war. Neither did he have to receive anything from it, not kingdom, not anything, not followership, nothing. He was there for the benefit of the people. And he says that there is nothing that should be attained, avaptavyam, by me. There is nothing unattained and there is nothing that I need to attain. And yet, Arjuna, I engage in action, varta karmani. And how does he address Arjuna here? He says Partha. Oh Partha. Partha, because he is linking Partha to himself, Arjuna to himself. Partha, you are the son of Prithu. Prithu is Kunti. The son of Kunti or Prithu is Partha. And the brother of Kunti is Vasudeva, Krishna's father. So both of us, the same lineage. Why is it that you are thinking so differently from me? You want to leave your karma, you want to stop doing your karma yoga, and you want to go and start meditating. As an avatar or otherwise, we see Bhagavan ceaselessly active, ceaselessly. And why is that? He says, if I should not engage myself in action, na varteyam, if I should not, this is verse 23, and without any relaxation, ceaselessly. Atandritaha means without any break. Without any, tandra means break. Atandra, without any break. without any tiredness, without any laziness. Then he says, if I don't do that, anuvartante, people will follow my path. Vartamanu vartante, vartamana anuvartante. So people will follow my path in every way, sarvashaha. And he says that I have to do everything, even here. Again, O Partha, because he is telling him that even here in this middle of the battlefield, you now made me come and stand in the middle of the battlefield. The battle bugles have blown, which means the war has started. If they choose, from there we will be under a shower of arrows. And look at you, Arjuna, you are sitting down, discarded your bow and arrow. I am out here without nihatta, without any weapon. I have taken an oath not to pick up a weapon. And look what you are doing. You are putting me in grave danger, but yet I am sitting here, I am not moving. So while Narayana has taken so many incarnations, the incarnations of Lord Rama and Krishna, these avatars are known as Purna Avatara. Purna Avatara means what? They set an example for human beings to follow through their own actions. Most of the other incarnations, in fact, all the other incarnations, why is it that Ramayana and Mahabharata and Krishna stories are the most sort of followed? They're mostly for people to learn, read, listen, practice. That is because Bhagavan sets an example for people to follow. That is why they are Purna Avatar. So even when we see that avatars, they perform out of the world tasks also, right? Bhagavan Rama did not. Bhagavan Rama lived as a steady, normal human being. He didn't perform too much of magic. But Bhagavan Krishna, we know him for his leelas. But each of his leelas are also purpose-oriented actions. One beautiful story to relate, to give this example. Once, Ma Yashoda was churning butter. And Krishna comes running in and he says, Amma, I'm hungry. Feed me milk. So Yashoda starts feeding him milk. And as she is feeding him, she senses the milk which is on the stove also boiling over. So quickly sets aside Krishna and runs to switch off the stove. This makes Krishna very angry, absolutely angry. His eyes were red and he was furious. How dare you put me aside like this? Am I more important or is your milk on the stove more important? And as his mother went into the kitchen, she was churning butter, right? He broke the pot. All the curd came out. He took a couple of handfuls of butter from the pot, stormed across all over the curd, the entire room. In fact, in Krishna Janmashtami, we have this white footprint of Bhagavan, like that, on the curd, white footprint of Krishna. Stormed, went and sulked in the corner, eating. But by the way, sulking meaning not that I'm not eating the butter and sulking. So Yashoda came and she was angry. She was upset at this. And she said, I must teach this boy, is just impossible. I have to teach him a lesson not to repeat this. So she runs after him. Ma Yashoda is running after him and Bhagavan is running and she is running and Krishna is running. She is running. Their mother and son are, she's just not able to catch him. Come what may. And ultimately she just gives up. Oh my God, Krishna, this is impossible. Not only are you impossible, it is impossible to catch you. She's completely broken down, tired, dejected out there. Oh Krishna, how do I catch you? And at that time, Krishna comes close to her and literally allows himself to be taught. What is the message Bhagavan is giving us through this Leela? He says, wholeheartedly surrender with devotion to Bhagavan, like Yashoda did. Oh Krishna, it's impossible to catch you. I give up in front of you. And he will be in your embrace. I will be in your embrace when you seek me out with devotion, with full devotion. But Yashoda is still upset, by the way. So she is, this tantrums of Sri Krishna. So now that he is in her embrace, she wants to tie him up. So she gets a rope and she tries to tie him up. And the rope is a few centimeters short. So she gets one more rope, ties the two together, tie him up. Then she'd get, that's also a few centimeters short. Third rope, a bigger, longer rope, tie it up. That also is a few. Every rope that she gets, she exhausts all the ropes that are in the house. But each one of them turn out to be a few centimeters. Bhagwan's message through this Leela. He, Bhagwan, has no limits. There is no inside, there is no outside of Bhagwan. Cannot be bound. Only if there is an inside and an outside can you bind anything. But there is no inside and outside. Similarly, there are no limits. There is no ending and there is no beginning for him to be tied up. Only if there is an end and a beginning can something be tied up. So that vast, unending reality. Finally, Krishna saw that Yashoda is again completely exhausted, and he allows himself to be tied. Okay, ma, you want me to tie me up? Tie me up. And Yashoda ties him to the mortar in which she churns the butter. And what is Bhagwan's message here? He's supremely compassionate and does not like the suffering, because here he saw Ma Yashoda, she's suffering actually because she's not able to get hold of this tantrum-oriented boy. Beyond a point, he will ensure that the devotee's suffering come to an end. At the right moment, he submits himself. How does the suffering come to an end? Bhagwan submits himself to the protection of the devotees. The other way around. Not that, like I was giving an example earlier. I will not go into that story now, but I tell my team members, forget about the employee being loyal to the organization or being aligned to the team or the organization. Is the organization loyal to you? Is the organization aligned to you? And it essentially means that if the organization has potential to fulfill the individual's aspirations, then that means that the organization is aligned. Similarly, Bhagavan here, he submits himself to the embrace of the devotee, to the protection of the devotee. So Yashoda nicely has tied her up. Now she is started busying herself with the chores, thinking that Krishna is nicely tied up. He is going to be there. Everything is going to be under control. No more, tantrums from his side, and he'll not be able to get into any mischief. Now, what does Krishna do? He pulls. He's the limitless strong in terms of strength also. He takes the mortar along with him. He drags the mortar, takes it to the garden, and gets the mortar wedged in between two. There are twin trees in the garden in Vrindavan, So he gets it wedged in between the twin trees and he pulls the trees down. And as the tree comes crashing down, there are two celestial bodies by name Nalakuvara and Manigriva. They are set free. They were converted into trees by a curse of sage Narada. Because of they are sons of Kubera. And it's known that in the heavens, God, sometimes Indra and his kingdom, they go pretty berserk, in the heavens. Enjoyment is at its pinnacle. So the sons of Kubera enjoying at their pinnacle are cursed by sage Narada. And they are converted into trees. By the way, it is also said that there are trees in Vrindavan, witnessing all the Krishna Leelas. So they actually didn't even realize that they were in the curse. So celestial bodies, and Bhagwan's message through this Leela is that he is the protector and reliever of sufferings of all the Munis, of the Devas. And in fact, the main purpose of this Leela is to relieve the two celestial beings from the curse that they were under. So there is this beautiful song also, which is in praise of Lord Ranganatha, Bhagavan Ranganatha in Srirangam. And Ranganatha is representative of both Rama and Krishna. The Bhagavan, the two avatars who show us through example. That is Ranganatha, representative of both of them. And there is this beautiful verse. I can't do this raga and all that. I can sing Bollywood songs, but I'm going to request my niece to sing these two verses because it's really beautiful. Go ahead, Amrita.
मुनि संकट हरन गोविंद वेंकटरमण मुकुंद मुनि संकट हरन गोविंद वेंकटरमण मुकुंद संकट हरन गोविंद वेंकटरमण मुकुंद शंकर्षण मूल कंद शंकर गुरु गुहा नंद रंग पूर विहारा जय कोदंड रामावतार रघुवीर श्रीरंग पुर विहारा.
Thank you. So what a beautiful, this is by Muthuswami Dikshitar. Beautiful, lovely song that shows. So the entire song is really nice. But in this line, he says, Muni Sankata Harana Govinda. So the one who, the Govinda, who all the Sankatas he destroys, Harana. Of who? Of the Munis, the reliever of sufferings of the Munis. The Lord, when he was tied with a cord is Dama. Around his waist is Udara. That Lord is known as Damodara. So that's how Bhagavan Sri Krishna gets the name Damodara. This mother of his god Yashodha tied him around the waist with the cord. Another interpretation is that that Bhagavan, the one we get to know, we get familiar with through a mind that is purified. Udara, purified, a purified mind by means of controlling the mind, controlling Dama, Shama, Dama. Remember the Sham Adi Shatka Sampatti, Dama, control of the mind. By Dama, you purify your mind. And when you do that, you get to realize that Bhagavan. And how does one attain Chitta Shuddhi, purification of the mind? Bhagavan has told us repeatedly through Karma Yoga. And Bhagavan says, I perform my Karma Yoga, O Arjuna. O son of Kunti, with love, my cousin brother. In these two verses, Sri Krishna has spoken about his action, his own action orientation, his own dedication to performance of duty as an avatara. In the next verse, verse 24, he emphasizes the criticality of his taking action as Bhagwan. We will see verse 24.
Utsede yurimi loka na kuryam karma chedaham Shankarasya shakartasyam upahanyami mam prajaha.
Bhagavan says that the three worlds will perish. They'll actually perish if I do not perform action. And he says, I would be the author of confusion in roles of the people, not only the people, but also of the Devas. Even Lord Brahma will get confused about his role. And what happens when the people get confused about their roles, about Bhagavan? The Devas get confused about their role. Lord Brahma gets confused about his role. It would lead to perishing of the entire creation. And that would lead to destruction of the beings. Now Bhagavan comes to, after saying that I also act, not only in my avatara form, but also in the form of the God. Then he says, how is it that ignorant people and the wise people should take action, should do their karma? We'll go to verse 25.
Sakta karmanya vidvamsaha yata kurvanti bharata kuryan vidvamstata saktaha chikirshirloka sangraham.
He says, as the vidvamsaha means the ignorant. As much as the ignorant act in eagerness. And what is the eagerness that propels the ignorant to act? That kurvanti, selfishness. That selfishness, the attachment, the saktaha. The saktaha attitude, the attachment to the result, the selfish reason with which they perform action with eagerness. All of us perform action because we have something to achieve. And that something to achieve is for our own sake. With that eagerness, even the knowledgeable should perform. The Vidvam, Kuryat, they should act. Kuryat Vidwan Tatha, they should act with that same eagerness. But what is the difference? If the eagerness is the same, then what is the difference? The difference is asaktaha. Earlier it is saktaha, here it is asaktaha, unattached. So if you are going to act without attachment, then for what do you act? Bhagavan says for loka sangraha. Loka sangraha means for the welfare of the world. So like a person who is selfish, full of ego, having desires, operating in the realm of the three gunas. The three gunas are what? The tamasic, rajasic and sattvic gunas. They work non-stop for the gratification of their ego and for fulfillment of their desires. Those are the two reasons that they work. Gratification and fulfillment. In the same way, the wise person should act with the same energy, but not for self-fulfillment or fulfillment of desires, and not for ego gratification. This Bhagavan will now further talk about these two aspects, but for the welfare of society. The former acts in a saktaha manner, attached manner. The latter acts in an unattached manner, asaktaha manner. That's the only difference. The dynamism, the speed, the devotion, the dedication, that should be the same, maybe even more in this case. And Bhagavan also introduces us to a beautiful concept here, Loka Sangraham. Loka means the world. Sangraha means collection, or Loka means people. In this case, the elements of creation, which is more than the people also, including people, but other aspects also. All the five, yagyas where we saw 5 elements, all of them. So for the benefit of this collection, for Loka Sangraham, for them, to hold the creative elements together, at a micro level to hold the society together, by being an inspiration, an ideal. Bhagavan also said that, when you are an inspiration and an ideal, people follow you. And it also is a necessity for protection of the masses, ensuring their welfare. So Arjuna is prepared to run away from the battlefield, but he's not there to battle for himself or for the fathers, uncles, brothers, sisters, cousins, grandsires that he's seeing in front of them. And those are the excuses that Arjuna gives. He is there to battle for the welfare of the people, of the state. That is why he is there, for Loka Sangraha. And how is it that this ignorant person, saktaha to action, what are the elements that make the person attached to action? That is covered by Bhagavan in verse 27.
Prakriti kriyamanani punai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate.
Prakriti means nature. Nature is what? Not the swabhava. Nature means the tamas, rajas, sattvic nature. The gunas that lead to maya. The trigunatmika maya. That element of nature. The swabhava comes from what? The body, mind, and the nature of the individual element comes from the body, the mind, and the intellect of that individual element. But this prakriti comes from the tamas, rajas, sattva aspects of the nature. So it's the basal nature that is part of creation. And Bhagavan says, karmani sarvashaha, actions of all kinds, kriya karmani, performed. Whatever actions are being performed, they are gunaihi. It is by the qualities arising out of Gunaihi, qualities arising out of Prakriti, nature. All actions are performed by the qualities arising out of nature. Which nature? Tamasic, Rajasic, Sattvic nature. The body, mind, intellect, guna arises from the Tamasic, Rajasic, Sattvic Prakriti. The mind and the intellect, which is what? The manas and the buddhi, they come from the Sattvic aspect of Prakriti. The body, which is the karmendriyas, element, all the karmendriyas put together, that comes from the Rajas and the Tamasic aspects of Prakriti. And Bhagavan says that the ignorant, the Vimudhatma, and why are they ignorant? Because they are deluded by Ahankara Manyate Kartaham. They are deluded by the ego, and being deluded by the ego, thinks or believes that I am the doer. Everything is happening because of me. Because I am doing, I am the cause. Bhagavan says nothing doing. It is happening because of nature. The deluded people perform these, all the actions that they do, thinking that they are the doer. And because they do thinking that I am the doer, they get attached to it. It's a direct link. Not only to the action, but also to the result. When you have this ego attachment to the action, you then possess the action. I am doing it and the result belongs to me. And if the result does not come, then you are demoralized. We may think that we are doing something, but actually it is another force that is making it happen. If we keep peeling onion layer after layer after layer, layers keep coming out, and after some time nothing is there. Similarly, when we perform action without having this attachment to the results, after removing the ego, layer after layer after layer of the ego, disconnecting with the action, disconnecting the ego with the result, after some time, this aspect of I am the doer, that disappears, that goes away. And if this is the case, then how should a person who is not yet ready to obtain perfection? Okay? Remember, all of us are not ready. Bhagavan actually says to Arjuna, right? That Arjuna, your only qualification is performing action. You're not ready for perfection yet. How does that person who is still ignorant, who is still having this natural attachment to ego because of the guna induced by Prakriti, how does this person act and make progress? Bhagavan brings in a very simple element of bhakti. We'll go to verse 30.
Vai sarvani karmani sanyasyadyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvaraha. So Bhagavan brings in this aspect of bhakti, renounce everything in me. And he says what? Adhyatma chetasa with a mind that is focused, single pointed. We saw in chapter 6 also. Bhagavan gives a step-by-step way to become single pointed. With a centered mind, with a focused mind. Focused on what? Mai, in me, in Bhagavan, the higher ideal. And the higher ideal is what? Enables success in action. We have seen this, right? We've also discussed so many examples, like that of Roger Federer, who is playing this game. If Roger Federer is going to focus on the point, today there was actually the women's, I should take a women's example, but there was the final of the Australian Open. But I don't know the current players very well. So when a Djokovic or a Federer focuses, or a Nadal focuses on a point and loses the point, there is a sense of disappointment. You lose another 2 points, demoralization. Another 3 points, the entire game is lost. You feel dejected. Disappointment, demoralization, dejection.
But when you focus on the higher ideal, which is the tournament or which is the game of tennis, not focusing on winning or losing point after point after point, then the performance is much, much better. Then the mind is going towards how I'm hitting the shot, how I'm playing the game. And when the mind is on playing the game, then there is no result focus. When there is no result focus, the game, the quality of the game improves. You see this in any champion. People who get frustrated by individual action ultimately lose. People who have a larger goal, who are focused on a higher ideal, they normally succeed. Bhagavan says, Adhyatma Chetasa, the mind centered on me, my, not on the results of your action. And not only Adhyatma Chetasa, he says, Sanyasya Sarvani Karmani, renouncing all the actions in me. Now, in the next satsang, we will come to that in more detail. Renouncing actions. Bhagavan first tells you to perform actions. Then he is now beginning to say, he is introducing the concept of renouncing actions. Renouncing all actions in me. In this way, what do? You give up the notion of I am doing. I am not playing, I am not winning, I am not losing. And Bhagavan says, Yudhyasva. Yudhyasva implies do your duty. Arjuna's duty is to fight, to be in this yuddha. All of us duty is to be in some yuddha or the other. And then Bhagavan says, when you work in this manner, when you act in this manner, even though you're ignorant, what will happen? You will become bhutva. You will become nirashihi nirmamo. Nirashihi means free from selfishness. Nirashihi, this sense of I want, that goes away. And nirmamo. Nirmamo means free from ego. That sense of I, mama, that goes away. The sense of I. I plus I want is what we saw earlier also. Leads to attachment. So, when you perform actions this way, you lose the sense of I and I want. And when that happens, your mind is much more calmer. When the mind is much more calmer, Bhagavan uses the term Vigata Jwaraha. Vigata means give up. Jwaraha is fever. There is that fever in the mind, that disturbance in the mind. That disturbance that comes from Aham and Mama, that disturbance that comes from ego and desire, that disturbance goes away. When that disturbance goes away, performance is improved. When work is done without devotion to the higher ideal and without equanimity to the results that are being received, then it results in mental disturbance. When there is no dedication to the higher ideal, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, when there is no dedication or equanimity in receiving what we, anyway, when you do something, something will happen. There is a result of action. When that automatic result of action comes, there is no equanimity. Oh, I wanted that, I got only this. When that is there, what is this? Nothing but disturbance. So when a person performs action without any of these elements, Prasada Buddhi or Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, there is disturbance. That disturbance is Jwara, fever. And Bhagavan says, with Ishvara Arpana Buddhi is what? Adhyatma Chetasa, focused in me. Same as Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. See, everything comes around in very different, beautiful ways connected to each other. And Nirashihi Nirmamoho is nothing but Prasada Buddhi. Nirasha Nirmama. I and I want are not there. When I and I want are not there, you receive whatever you receive with equanimity. Or as benevolence. Like I said earlier, when you receive prasada in this temple, you are not complaining, hey, you got kaju and kismis, I got only leaf, tulsi ka patta. Do we do that? We receive whatever we receive with grace, no? You don't have pujari, you gave, Amrita is sitting in front of me, Amrita got kaju, kismis, you gave me only tulsi ka patta. Whatever we receive with grace, with devotion, with equanimity. That should be there for all our actions everywhere. So an ignorant person must act with the attitude of Adhyatma Chetasa and Nirashi Nirmamo. Adhyatma Chetasa is equal to Ishwararpana Buddhi. Nirashi Nirmamo is equal to Prasada Buddhi. But Bhagavan will talk about devotion in multiple levels in future also. So for an ignorant person, this is the element or the bhakti aspect of devotion. Bhagavan later on says that for a knowledgeable person, he prescribes paravairagya. Dispassion, not just dispassion, supreme dispassion, paravairagya. And for a person who is highly accomplished and is perfect, one who has achieved Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Bhagavan prescribes Satvika Shraddha. These we'll come to them later. So, quick story, one of my favorites. One day, a man asks Bhagavan, please, Bhagavan, show me, heaven and hell. How do they look? I want to be familiar with them before I land up in one of them. Bhagavan says, okay, come, let me take you. And he shows two doors. He opens one door, and in the door inside, this person sees that a bunch of people sitting around a large center round table, a big pot of beautiful, deliciously smelling soup. But these people are all frail, broken, extremely sad, depressed, skeletal. And that food in front of them the aroma is unbelievably inviting. This person himself wants to go and taste it. Then he sees that, each of these people sitting around, on their arms are tied these long spoons. They are able to reach the soup, but they are not able to bring it to their mouth and eat it. And he says, oh my God, Bhagavan, this is hell. Having that aroma coming to you, but not able to relish it. Not able to get it. This is definitely hell. Please, let's run away from it. Bhagavan says, okay, fine. Now that you have seen hell, see heaven. Opens the other door. And this man is stunned to see exactly the same situation. A round, large table with beautiful, same smell. Exactly the same soup. The aroma wafting through the breeze towards him and towards the others. But these people are laughing, chatting, healthy, happy. And he's wondering, what is this going on? The same scene, exactly picture detail, everything is identical, but the only difference is here the people are so much more happy. What's going on here? Then he notices that these people are focused on a higher ideal. What is the higher ideal? The ultimate human goal is what? Happiness, right? Focused on that higher ideal, they are using, obviously the spoon is too long, the ladle is too long to reach your own mouth, but it can reach the other person's mouth. So they are feeding each other. Bhagavan says, see, this is the only difference. The selfish, they are so drowned in their selfish desire that they don't even think of feeding each other, because of which they are miserable. But in heaven, you have people who are focused on the higher ideal. Focused on a higher ideal, selfishness goes away. Selfishness goes away, you start thinking of how to enjoy what is there in front of you. That is the difference between heaven and hell. Focus on higher ideal. With Adhyatma Chetasa, focus in me, my. Now the question comes, if following this teaching is so simple, no? Then why does it become a rule? Why doesn't it get proclaimed as an order? Impose it on everybody. You have to do. There's no choice. Why is that not there? Why doesn't it become a commandment? Bhagavan gives the answer in verse 33.
Sadrisham cheshtade swasyaha prakritirjnanavanapi prakritinyanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati.
Bhagavan says that everyone, whether it is the knowledgeable or the wise, even the wise, here he says even the wise, even the wise is acting in accordance with his own nature. Beings follow their nature. And when beings follow their nature, what is it that restraint, supervision, what can they do? Rules. The swabhava or nature that we have, it's not accidental. Our nature comes from deep-rooted tendencies, which are called what? Which are the vasanas, the inherent tendencies, the genetic code, scientifically speaking. And then as we travel through the passage of life, our experiences also shape our inclinations. And all these inclinations which are inherent and experienced, all of them together shape our nature. And that nature is very strong and it is difficult to change. So when that is so, how can you, it's like that kutte ka poonch ko kitna marji kar lo, what is that called? Seedha nahi hota or something, right? So even a person who is knowledgeable, who knows the difference between the right and the wrong, acts according to nature. I know that as I'm doing something, something inside tells me, that conscience, that I know that something inside is pricking. I know this is wrong. I know this is not the best action for me. It's not correct. It's not good. But there is some other overpowering force which makes me do. It's like Duryodhana said that in the beginning, you know. In the Mahabharata, when we read, we see, he says there is this force which is making me do. I know this is wrong. I know this is adharma. He says, it's not like I don't recognize this is adharma. Duryodhana himself says that. But there is this force in me which is making me do it. That nature. You know, there was the story about a person in the cliff, standing on the edge of the cliff taking selfie, fell down. You know, you kind of know that it's the riskiest thing to do, or at least put safeguards in place. So, whether it is 1 commandment, 10 commandments, 20 commandments, all that is prescribed by organized religion. You know, we talked about organized religion earlier. Organized religion will have all those commandments. Bhagavan does not give commandments. And Bhagavan says, Nigraha kim karishyati. What can you do when a person is so driven by the prakriti, which causes the guna? The rajas, tamas, sattva, which causes the body, mind, intellect, personality. But the statement, Nigraha kim karishyati, is not Bhagavan saying despairing, you know, give it up. No, it's not a statement of despair. It is a statement where Bhagavan says, you need to put in effort. And in the entire Bhagavad Gita, he comes back again and again and again and educates Arjuna and asks how to put in this effort, what kind of effort to put in to be able to overcome this. And one of the efforts that he has taught us now is to do the karma focused on him, on the higher ideal. Do your actions, do not avoid your actions, but focus mind on the higher ideal. Whatever we think of the higher, if we don't believe in Bhagavan, choose what is the higher ideal. Bhagavan will manifest in that. Any higher ideal. There is enough scientific evidence and proof that when we focus on a higher ideal, we do better. And the jwaraha, the disturbances also go away. That is what Bhagavan is telling us. And then he continues in the next verse, 34.
Indriyasyendriyasyarte ragadveshau vyavastitau tayornavashamagachet tau yasya paripantinau.
Indriyasya, indriyasya. So Bhagavan repeats it. In each and every indriya, in each and every cell, in each and every element that composes the formation of Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas. And Bhagavan says, Indriya arthaha. In the objects that are the focus of these Indriyas. So what are these objects? You know, the faculties of perception or the Jnanendriya, they are the Shrotra Tattvaha, which is the hearing elements that the ears perceive. Whatever the ears, the objects are whatever the ears, the music, the sound, the rain falling, all of that. The tvak tattvaha are the skin elements, the touching elements, which is felt by the skin. The chakshu tattva are the seeing elements that are seen by the eyes. The rasana tattva are the tasting elements that are tasted by the tongue. And the gandha tattva are the smelling elements smelt by the nose. And the 5 faculties of action or karmendriya, they are the vak tattva or the speech, which is from the voice, the pani tattva, which is the grasping elements, the hands, the pada tattva, which is the walking elements with the legs, the payu tattva, the excretory elements, which is from the excretory system, the excretion elements from the excretory system, and the upastha tattva, which are the procreation elements, the reproductive system. The impulses, they get into us, the input-output process. They get into us through the sense organs and they go out, are permeated out through the motor organs. And Bhagavan says that raga dveshau vyavasthitau. The likes and the dislikes, the raga and the dvesha, are seated in each of these elements. What influences our behavior is our response to these likes and dislikes. What we like is good, what we dislike is bad or not good. And after educating us like this, Bhagavan says, please do not come under the sway. Na agachet. Do not come under their sway. Please note that Bhagavan is not saying, do not have likes or dislikes. Like having likes or dislikes is related to what? Goes to Prakriti. Bhagavan is saying, do not come under the sway of likes and dislikes. And why does he say that? When he says Vasham, do not come under them, do not get clasped by them. And why? Tau hyasya paripantinau. These two are surely enemies. We have to give them the jolt. We can't get the reins of our action, cannot be in the hands of our likes and dislikes, our raga and dvesha. The reins of our actions have to be above that. Paripanthinau, paripanthin means highway robbers. Highway robbers stop you, rob you, take away everything and run away and throw you into the ditch. Similarly, raga dvesha are like highway robbers in the path to spiritual being. In the path of spirituality, these are highway robbers. They just come, they just take away and throw you out and move on. Swami Chinmayananda ji says, a quiet, alert, vigilant mind itself is sadhana. This always reminds me, this verse, and I must repeat this, even in this revision of this song that my daughter used to, very small she used to be, about 4 or 5 years old, That time she used to sing this lovely little song. Every single cell in my body is good. Every single cell in my body is happy. They'll all be dancing, with gay abandon, these kids. And even when my daughter is alone, she'll be singing this and dancing and smiling. And every single cell, every single element. So how we think, how we are able to not allow the raga dvesha to control us, rather how our mind gets under control is the key. Now comes Arjuna's next question, and he asks that there are so many possibilities, Bhagavan, of going astray. Okay, infinite. And we are not going to touch upon that verse. He says, oh Varshneya, there are so many possibilities. Tell me that one thing. Okay, that one aspect, if I conquer that, will lead to conquering all these elements of going astray. And Bhagavan Vacha, verse 37.
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashanu Mahapapma Viddhena Miha Vairinam.
So Bhagavan says, oh, Sri Bhagavan Vacha. Bhagavan says, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha. Arjuna asks for one. Tell me that one thing. Bhagavan actually, starts with Kama and adds on Krodha also. Kama is desire. Krodha is anger. And Bhagavan says, Esha, this desire, this anger, Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha, is the cause for restless, agitated nature that leads to instability. And he says, please know, Mahashano Mahapapma, Vidyeham Iha Vairinam. Please know that this is one enemy. This is the single one enemy. And this is Mahashano Mahapapma, all devouring and all sinful. Desire is the most virulent of all viruses. If it is there, it grows like crazy. Like that proverbial beanstalk, Jack and the beanstalk. And we saw in the ladder of fall. So where does desire come from? Desire comes from Vishaya Dhyana, thinking about the object. Thinking about object leads to attachment to the object. The propensity to seek pleasure from that object. Believing that happiness lies in that object. That leads to Kama, desire. I want element. I want comes from Kama. If Kama is fulfilled, then it leads to Lobha, greed. If Kama is not fulfilled, it leads to anger, Krodha. That is why Bhagavan adds quickly. But let's see why he adds anger only and not Lobha. Because if Lobha is fulfilled, then it leads to Mada or pride. And if Lobha is not fulfilled, it leads to Matsarya or jealousy. And both Mada and Matsarya lead to Sammudha or delusion. And anger also leads to Sammudha or delusion. That is why anger is the key element. All of this comes into ultimately delusion. Sammudha or delusion leads to Smriti Bhramsha, memory loss. This basically we are repeating what Bhagavan said in verse chapter 2. Verse 63 or something like that, 63, 64. Smriti Bhramsha or memory loss leads to Buddhinasha. Buddhinasha means loss of Viveka. Viveka goes away. Loss of clarity, loss of discrimination. Viveka means what? The ability to discriminate. That goes away. And that leads to Pranashyati, perishment. Perishment of what? The ultimate human goal of Parama Purushartha of happiness. And how do we handle this enemy? One of the key ways to handle this enemy is through Kautilya's Arthashastra. Kautilya Arthashastra, Chanakya had talked about Sama, Dama, Bheda, Danda. Sama means talks, conciliatory approach, persuasion. Dana is gift, giving a gift, giving compensation, asking earnestly. Or it is also Dhamma. Dhamma is paying the value or the price. What is the Dham? Then Bheda. Bheda is using logic or trickery to influence the mind. And if any of these do not work, then Danda, use of force, war. Even in Mahabharata, that's what happened. Sri Krishna tried all 4 elements before finally saying, okay, this is. In fact, Duryodhana was going to imprison him when he went as an emissary. And that is when Bhagavan said, war is inevitable. So what do we use for this enemy called desire, this Kama, and Krodha, which is linked to that, this enemy which is Mahashano, Mahapapma. This is Mahashano, all devouring. So because it is all devouring, this gifts and paying the price and all, okay, how much ever you give, it will consume. It's not going to work. Limitless well. It will just keep, like vacuum, it will keep going into it, sucking it up, all devouring. Mahapapma is all sinful. Because it is all sinful, Sama, conciliatory approach will not work. Because they will deceive you. That desire will deceive you. At that time, it will appear as if it is conciliatory also. But it will deceive you. Bheda, logic or trickery also will not work. Because it's too clever and too Mahapapma sinful to get, tricked. So the only way is all out war, Danda. Bhagavan says, target this enemy and get rid of it. There's the story of Hanuman, and I know I'm crossing time, but this is too, it's very relevant and very interesting, right? Hanuman crossing the ocean to go to Lanka. He meets with 3 obstacles, and all in a version, all the 3 obstacles can be perceived as, manifestations of desire. First obstacle is this Mainak Parbat, which emerges in front of him and says, "Oh, Hanuman, you must be so tired. You're performing such an unbelievable feat. Please take few minutes rest." Hanumanji says, "Rama kaj kare binu mohe kaha vishram." I cannot rest till I finish Bhagwan's work. If you rest, you rust. So you do not rest till when you're working. Then another element comes. That's called Sursa. Sursa is this white serpent, big serpent. And the serpent says, "I'm going to eat you up." And Hanuman first says, "Please don't, I'm doing the Lord's work." So he practices the element of earnestly asking, the dana approach. Sursa is adamant, doesn't listen. "I am going to eat you up today." Then Hanuman says, "I'm not going to allow you to eat me up." And he becomes bigger. Sursa opens the mouth wider, he becomes even more bigger. Then he tricks Sursa, quickly assumes a very small form, goes into her mouth and comes out and says, "You didn't eat me." There's also another story where he, uses danda, but we'll come to the third one. Sinhika is a force which is attracting Hanuman. It has the magnetic power to pull a person towards one's own shadow. So Hanuman's shadow is on the ocean as he's flying, and this Sinhika is pulling him towards the bottom of the ocean. Hanuman picks up his mace and immediately kills Sinhika, danda. So when to use sword is a very, very crucial element of fighting the enemy. And this Mahashano Mahapapma, enemy of Kama, depending on the severity, we have to deal with it. That now Bhagavan comes in the next verse. That how do you deal with it? Depending on the severity of this enemy. Verse 38.
Bhumi navriyate vahani yatadarsho malena cha yatulbi navrito garbha tadate namavritam.
Tatha tene dam avritam. Bhagavan's avritam means enveloped. This is enveloped by it, Bhagavan says. What is enveloped by what? This idam, the wisdom, the devotion, the knowledge, that element of knowledge and devotion to do karma yoga selflessly, that is enveloped by desire and anger. Desire leads to anger. Tene is referring to desire and anger. And Bhagavan gives 3 examples which are indicative of the severity. The 3 examples he gives are Dhume na vrite vanhi. Dhume na vrite vanhi means like smoke covers fire. Vanhi fire, dhume na smoke, avrite covered. Like fire is covered by smoke. Yatha darsho malena cha, as dust covers a mirror. Yathol bena vrito garbha, as an embryonic wall covers the fetus. These are the 3 levels of covering. So as we know, the smoke covers the fire, yes, but it is very frivolous. A small breeze can blow it away. Or sometimes you can step onto the other side and it will get blown away. The dust which is on top of a mirror, depending on how long, sometimes the dust gets very sticky also. It covers the mirror more severely. The mirror, you don't see your image. And the embryonic wall, that covers the fetus completely. In that way, Bhagavan says, Tataha, this wisdom is veiled by desire. That knowledge and devotion with which to do karma yoga is veiled by desire. So severity levels. So even though the smoke covers the fire can still give heat. The function of the fire, is not just to burn. The function of the fire is to provide heat. That function is not eliminated. Similarly, when desire is existent as a thought, as a passing thought, the wisdom continues to function. And we can use sama to persuade that desire and keep it at bay and be on track. Dust, when it covers the mirror, the function of the mirror is eliminated. You do not see the reflection properly. Similarly, when desire is more strong, when desire is, again and again, it has gone through the mind, you're churning with that same desire. When the mind is churning again and again and again, that time the wisdom does not function effectively. Even though we know the person may be wise, like Swamiji example I gave, no? Gulab jamun, coffee. We know that the person is knowledgeable, very well read in Vedas, has the knowledge of the Karma Kanda of the Vedas. But desire is enveloping that person's performance. There one can use Dhamma, request it to be on track, manage it. But when the fetus, fetus for 9 months, you can do nothing. You can't even see it. Nowadays, yes, modern science, we can see. But still, we can only see the image. We can't see the actual baby. So when similarly desire are covered and, again and again and again, it's solidified, that desire becomes an inherent part of the person's existence. When it becomes a addiction. Earlier when, we had around this time, Nipun had asked that time also, he talked about addiction. When it becomes addiction, when desire becomes addiction, then the wisdom can neither be seen nor can it be allowed to function. At that time, there is no other choice but to annihilate it, kill it. And how does one annihilate desire? Bhagavan says in the last verse of this chapter, how do you annihilate this enemy which prevents our following Bhagavan and performing our duty? How do you do that? In verse 43.
Evam buddhi param buddhva samstabhyatmanamatmana jahi shatrum mahabahu kamarupam durasadam.
So Bhagavan says, having known that this is the most powerful element, this is that single enemy. Actually, there's one more verse in which Bhagavan says that desire is the most powerful. It is powerful than the mind, the intellect, the body, everything. So it takes over the body, mind, and intellect paradigm. So this, when you know that this is what the culprit is, when you know your enemy, one of the fundamental things of warfare is what? Knowing your enemy. So when you know that this is that enemy, which is Mahashano Mahapapman, which is not allowing me to, perform what I want to perform in a proper manner, and is not giving me that happiness, which is long lasting, the Nitya, not the permanent passing phase, but the Nitya, the lasting one. When you know it, then what do? Then he says that establish yourself, samstabhya, atmanam atmana, in the self by the self. By establishing yourself in the self by the self, slay this enemy. Jahi shatrum. Shatrum enemy, jahi slay. Kamarupa, in the form of desire. That is otherwise durasadam, difficult to. This Bhagavan also acknowledges. This desire is so durasadam, it is difficult to overcome. But by establishing yourself in the self by the self, we will come to this in the self by the self. Bhagavan will beautifully explain it in detail in the self by the self. Establishing yourself in the self by the self, slay this desire. And with this, Bhagavan, comes to the conclusion of Karma Yoga and how a person should act. First of all, act. How do you act? And how do you disassociate from your own action? And how do you, by submitting to the higher ideal, how do you act in a samachara manner, in the perfect manner? Thank you very much. Hari Om. We'll conclude.
I'll repeat the verses that we
Yes.
studied. यस्त्वात्मरतिरेव स्यात् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन्येवाच सन्तुष्टः तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते तस्माद् असक्त सततं कार्यं कर्म समाचर असक्तो ह्याचरन् कर्म परमाप्नोति पूरुषः यद्यदाचरति श्रेष्ठः तत्तदेवेतरो जनः स यत् प्रमाणं कुरुते लोकस्तदनुवर्तते न मे पार्थास्ति कर्तव्यं त्रिषु लोकेषु किञ्चन नानवाप्तमवाप्तव्यं वर्त एव च कर्मणि यदि ह्यहं न वर्तेयं जातु कर्मण्यतन्द्रितः मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्या पार्थ सर्वशः उत्सीदेयुरिमे लोका न कुर्यं कर्म चेदहं शङ्करस्य च कर्ता स्याम् उपहन्यामि मां प्रजाः सक्तकर्मण्य विद्वांसः यदा कुर्वन्ति भारत कुर्याद्विद्वांस्थितासक्तः जिगीषुर्लोकसङ्ग्रहम् प्रकृते क्रियमाणानि गुणैकर्माणि सर्वशः अहंकार विमूढात्मा कर्ताहमिति मन्यते मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि सन्न्यस्याध्यात्मचेतसा निराशीर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगतज्वरः सदृशं चेष्टते स्वस्याः प्रकृतिर्ज्ञानवानपि प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि निग्रह किं करिष्यति इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्नवशमागच्छेत् तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ श्रीभगवानुवाच काम एष क्रोध एष रजोगुणसमुद्भवः महाशनो महापाप्मा विद्येनमिह वैरिणम् धूमेन व्रियते वह्निः यथादर्शो मलिन च यतोल्बेनावृतो गर्भः तथा तेनेदमावृतम् एवं बुद्धि परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्
Om.
ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ
Hari Om. Thank you. Sorry it took long, but yeah. Any thoughts, comments? Okay, I think today we covered till 5:30 itself, and there are no thoughts, comments. So we'll say Hari Om, and next Saturday we start with revision of chapter 4. That will be our next Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Thank you. Hari Om.